Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle, and welcome to the National Parks Expedition Challenge. So today we're at Lava Beds National Monument in Northern California. It is a beautiful day out here, and we are here with our brand new ranger friend, Ranger Marc. Ranger Marc, thank you for inviting us here today.
Thank you for coming today.
So Ranger Marc, how did you get to the national parks?
Well, when I was a kid, when our parents went on the typical summer road trip, whenever they saw a sign with the national park arrowhead, they said, "Let's go and visit." And so as a kid, I had the privilege of seeing many, many, many national parks. And I would say it got under my skin when I was in high school and my mother volunteered at our career center. She made me take career tests, and it said I would either become a librarian or a national park ranger. And 28 years later, here I am.
Can you tell us a few of the parks that you've been to?
Well, the first park site I worked at was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania as a seasonal park ranger at Independence National Historical Park, the home of the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall. I did that for a few years, and my first permanent position was in Seattle, Washington, at the Seattle unit of Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park that tells the story of the great Klondike Gold Rush. And from there I went to north central Idaho and Nez Perce National Historical Park, which is a very unique national historical park dedicated to the story of the Nez Perce people. And then from there I moved back to Washington State, and I served at Mount Rainier National Park. And then 2.5 years ago, I came here to Lava Beds National Monument.
So you've done a little bit of historical parks, cultural parks, and natural resource parks. Do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite is a question I always get. And I will have to say that the place that I'm working at is my favorite place. Every single one of them, when I've left, I take a little bit of the park into my heart and carry it with me. And a month doesn't go by where I'm not thinking about places that I've been. The one place that means the most to me, because I saw it as a young man, is Mount Rainier. And when I saw that from my college dorm room, I thought, I'd like to work there someday. And 30 years later, lo and behold, I worked at Mount Rainier.
Can you tell us what you studied in college that sort of prepared you for this, besides following the arrowheads when you were young?
Well, I was the kid who was very shy, and my best friend was the public library. And we had a children's library in the town I grew up in, and I found the history section and gobbled up history books like there was no tomorrow. And that interest in history, and in particular military history, carried with me. So as an undergraduate at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, I was a history major. And then I went back east to Temple University and earned a PhD in American military and diplomatic history. So when you look at the books next to my bed, they're history books.
That's good. So reading was important to you, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk to the kids personally. But we're here at Lava Beds. I'm so excited because my grandson Oliver has a fascination with geology and volcanoes and lava tubes. So tell us about this place and what makes it special.
Well, we were created by an act of Congress nearly 100 years ago in 1925 by President Calvin Coolidge. National monuments are not created by our legislature or the Congress, they're created by an act from the president. And President Calvin Coolidge and his advisors thought this place was special enough to deserve protection. So we have two very broad stories that we tell here. We have a story of people. We're in the center of the homeland of the Modoc people. And in 1872 and 1873, there was a clash between the Modocs and the United States Army. So within the boundaries of lava beds, we take care of several battlefields of that war, as well as many of the cultural sites that are still tied to the Modocs and their descendants who are still here in the valley. We also concentrate on geology. We are in the heart of lava flows from a volcano that's just on our southern border called Medicine Lake. And I like to think that we have the largest concentration of lava tubes in the continent of North America. At the current number that have been identified is approaching 900.
And there are a lot of caves around here. Tell us a little
Yes.
bit about the caves.
Well, we use the word lava tube and cave interchangeably.
Okay.
The caves are actually lava tubes, and they're part of a braided system that is all over the park. The ones that are closest to us now are the ones that are most accessible, and there are lava tubes you can walk fully upright in. There are lava tubes that you have to bend over in, and there are lava tubes that you have to crawl in. Some are connected, some go in and out, but it's a very different experience than other caves in the country like Mammoth or Carlsbad caverns that have stalactites and stalagmites, where the plumbing system of a volcano, and it's made out of basalt, so it's very similar to walking in long, dark tunnels where sometimes you have to crawl and sometimes you have to stoop.
Well, having that many lava tubes here, I don't imagine that a ranger can lead you through all of those. So, are some of these self-led adventures?
Occasionally during the summertime, we have ranger-led cave tours, but most of the year, this is make your own adventure. We have maps. You go to a tube that you think is akin to what your experience level is, and you go and explore yourself. The only thing we ask is that you bring flashlights, and if you're going into a more complicated cave, you probably need knee pads and a hard hat.
Is there anything here that's active? Like, would we see any rumblings or see any lights or anything moving here?
The caves are their own ecosystems, and there's all sorts of critters from little invertebrates all the way to rodents, and of course bats who make the caves their home. The volcano that's to the south of us, which most of this lava came from, Medicine Lake, is still considered active, but it hasn't erupted in a very, very long time. So if you come here, you will be safe. Uh, the United States Geological Survey keeps track of the rumblings of the volcano, and there's thankfully nothing to report.
So, we have visited Mammoth Cave, Jewel Cave, Carlsbad Caverns. What is the difference between those types of caves and here at Lava Bed?
Well, the lava tubes here were created by a volcanic eruption. As the lava flowed off the mountain and came downhill, as it began to cool, it would form tunnels or layers which would insulate the lava running through it and would create this system of lava tubes. The caves like Mammoth and Carlsbad weren't created by volcanic eruptions, if you will. They were created by chemical reactions, water dripping through rock, dissolving it, and redepositing it in what we know as stalactites and stalagmites. So we have caves caused by a chemical reaction, we have caves caused by a volcanic eruption, and that's what we have here, and that's the chief difference.
Now, I know you don't like to play favorites, but is there a cave or a lava tube here that's really exciting for you?
One of the ones that I enjoy most is one of the easier ones because you can remain standing upright in it, but it's very long. It's over 3,500 feet long, and it's called Sentinel. Sentinel is only open in the summertime because in the wintertime, our friends the bats use it to hibernate in. So it's closed right now. But because of its length and its layers and its depth, when you walk through it, you really get a sense of how complicated this plumbing system is.
I love the analogy of it being a plumbing system. I wonder inside these lava tubes, are there any interesting formations? Like we know stalactites and stalagmites are in Mammoth and in Carlsbad. Do we name any of the formations here?
Each of the caves, or most of the identified caves, have a name that it was given by the people who came upon it maybe 100 years ago. The Modoc people may have given their own names, but we don't have those. When you get inside the caves, you will see that they're almost seemingly frozen in time. On the floor, you'll have ropey lava that appears to be bumpy. And sometimes when the lava began to dry, it was dripping. So you get lavasicles that aren't stalactites, but they appear to be because they're drips that were frozen. And of course, the size and shape of the tubes themselves was determined by the volumes of lava coming down and the conditions that were met. So we have big ones, small ones, long ones, short ones, you name it, we have it.
I love that, and I love the variety that we find here.
Yes.
As in all national parks, I know that we face challenges. Are there any challenges here that you face as a national park site?
Well, a lot of the challenges that we face are ones that are difficult to control because they come from outside of the borders of the monument. And I'm, of course, thinking of climate change and for our bat populations, white nose syndrome, a disease that has been spreading across the United States, killing hundreds of thousands and perhaps millions of bats across the country.
You do something here to help um, not eliminate, but reduce that problem. And what do you do here to help us with that white nose syndrome?
Well, because white nose is so prevalent in other areas of the country, and even here in California, it's been detected. It's our job to preserve these special places. So when somebody comes into our visitor center or passes through the entrance station, we simply ask them if you've been in any other caves, caverns, mines, or tunnels in the last 15 years. If they have been, then we ask them some more questions. Do you have any clothing or shoes or equipment on you that would have been in those caves? If they do, we would like them to clean their equipment with wipes that we give them. If they're wearing shoes that have been in a cave, we ask them, there's a device in the front of the visitor center that has a chemical called hydrogen peroxide that we want them to walk through. And if they can change their clothing, we ask them to do that as well, because white nose syndrome can last for up to 15 years on items of clothing, and we don't want people transferring the disease to our bats.
Well, why do we care about these bats? I mean, a lot of times bats are portrayed in movies and in books as things that are scary and something we should be afraid of, but that's not true, is it?
No, it's not. Bats can carry rabies, but for the most part, they're harmless critters that play a very important role in an ecosystem. Put simply, they eat insects. And as with any relationship with an animal and prey, if all the bats disappeared, imagine how many more insects we would have. So they play a critical role in insect control, and of course lava bed is their home, and we're very happy to accommodate them in calling this place home.
Well, that's going to take us to our call to action. So kids, we're going to be talking about our UN sustainability goals, and we're going to use two of those today. Let's think about goal number 3, which is good health and well-being, and then also goal number 15, which is life on land. Now we know what Lava Bed National Monument is doing to reduce the spread of the white nose syndrome, and when you're here visiting, You're going to do the things that Ranger Marc said. You're going to clean your clothing. You're going to clean your shoes. You're not going to go into a cave that has not been approved by the National Park Service to get into. And you're also going to be on the lookout for an injured or a deceased bat and report that to a ranger. But what can you do in your own community? Well, let's go ahead and be a bat advocate, if you will. Let's talk about the use of bats and how they're an important part of our ecosystems and our food chains. In fact, I did a little reading from the Fish and Wildlife Service that said an average bat can eat up to 3,000 insects a night. So don't be scared of them. In fact, invite them into your community. You can do a couple things. You can talk to your neighbors about reducing the lights outside. Once it's dark, we don't need to light up the sky anymore. So maybe you can either turn off the lights or use some reduced filter shades. You can also talk to your neighborhood about not cleaning out the trees. Don't cut those down. Those are homes, just like you wouldn't want someone to come in and take away your home. Let's leave those trees there. We also want to think about protecting the waterways. And if you want to invite those bats into your area, maybe you design a bat house. Now, there are a lot of directions online from reputable places that will give you the instructions to engineer your own bat houses. And remember, they're going to take the place of pesticides. They're going to eat those insects that we don't need around the house, so you can invite them in. If one gets into your house, though, we want you to be humane with it. So if you can't carefully get the bat out of your house, you can call services that can come in and relocate those. So this is a huge challenge. It can be something as simple as raising awareness of bats and their importance. It can be something a little bit more complicated, like getting together with some kids in your classroom, researching bat houses, and then actually designing and engineering one of those. All of these things will help the bats have a home, and it's also going to help us reduce and maybe someday eliminate this white nose syndrome. You know, we talk about being a good human. Well, we need to be good humans to the animals that are around us too. I think it would be interesting to see what our kids around the country could come up with to help celebrate bats and not make them that horror story that we sometimes hear. So Ranger Marc, they're going to want to share this with you in the park. So kids, make sure that when you are creating your prototypes, coming up with your ideas, that you're sharing this on social media at Dacia92, hashtag NatParkChallenge, and don't forget to tag Lava Beds National Monument, because they're interested to see what you come up with to help them with their challenges. I am so glad that you allowed us to be here today, Ranger Marc. Our kids are really getting interested in national parks and thinking about that as a career. So because they want that hat and that shiny badge that you have, can you look into that middle camera and give them any advice on how they can possibly work for the National Park Service someday?
Well, there's many stories about how difficult it is to get a job in the National Park Service, but I tend to disagree with that. Visit the places you'd like to work. There's national park units in all 50 states in the country and in the Caribbean and in the Pacific Islands as well. If you want to work for us, also think about how to prepare for the future. When we hire people, they tend to have 2 to 4 years of college, and they're still young in their 20s, but we also get people who are starting their second careers after teaching, or perhaps someplace else across the country. I would say live your dream. If this is a place or an occupation you would like to do, don't think of how difficult it is. Think of how you can make a difference to these very special places across the country.
That is great advice. We sometimes say that when your passion intersects your purpose, that you found your perfect place in life. And I think that you have found yours, starting as a young kid when you were chasing those arrowheads with your family to now working here at Lava Bed National Monument. So Ranger Marc, thank you so much for having us here today. Kids, thank you for joining us today. Thank you from the Lava Bed National Monument in Northern California. So on behalf of Dr. Drizzle and Ranger Marc, we are out of here.